Welcome, beautiful beings. I want to explore the world of fears. Fears that connect us all. It is a part of our human nature, our human survival, almost like the claws that we have to tune into that natural reaction of survival. And it's something that we all have, that we all share, no matter how much healing work we do, no matter where we are in our journey of life. We have fear somewhere or another. And the people that you experience in your world that don't seem to show that they have fear, and that you perhaps admire because you feel that they're fearless, it's not that they don't have any fear, or that they're braver than you, or that they're more courageous than you could be, but that they've learned to grow the capacity of being in the discomfort of fear, of being with themselves while they experience fear. Now, I'm not talking about phobias here, because phobias are, it's another world, and there are different approaches on how to handle and support yourself through phobias. But we're talking about those fears that trigger you into fight or flight or freeze mode throughout your regular life. The ones that linger in the background, the ones that stop you from speaking your truth, the ones that stop you from being who you are, with the ones that you love and with the ones that you don't love, with strangers, the ones that have you popping up into your brain, into your world of story and thoughts in order to solve your world and to disconnect from the triggers that have fear running through you. And we all have our own safety mechanisms, and it shows in different ways for different people. But here I want to explore that nature of fear and what it is to not be afraid to be afraid. And what that actually means. What does that mean? So fear is, in energy sense, something that ignites a lot of hormones, stress hormones that pump through our body around our kidney area. But it is also very mental. It is something that comes from the stories, the words that we repeat to ourselves, how we interpret the experiences that we have, how we see them, how we experience them. And when we can feel into what that actually feels like in our body and what it is that we do with that. So are we someone who goes into fight mode automatically? If we can slow ourselves down to experience, if we tend to freeze and lock ourselves up, if we start to run, if we avoid, if we choose to move away from, have a moment for yourself to consider what it is that you do. Or perhaps you use all of those strategies. But what is it that you do? And then start being with, what does that feel like? So in the moment when it's happening, when you are being triggered into fear, or that you know that you're going to be triggered into fear, one of the best strategies that I can offer you and tools or practices that I could offer you is to start paying attention to what's happening in your body, to be with the subtle shifts of energy that exists inside of your body in their actual sensation. So without going, this is fear, this is fear, this is fear, this is fear. If you can slow yourself down to feel and to move with the sensations through your body in those moments, to ground yourself, to perhaps touch your body in a grounding kind of way all over your body, to remember that you are here in this body, to remember to breathe, and to if needed, to shake your body out. Make an excuse to go off to the bathroom if you're in a public situation. No one will follow you in there, and shake out your body. Literally, like floppy shake it out. To come back in, to do things that will support you in the moment. Now, I remember a time in my life when my relationship was rocky, and there were so many triggers that both of us were facing in ourselves, but also projecting onto each other. And I felt a huge truth in where I stood and what I was trying to communicate, but we weren't able to see each other's side of things. And it freaked me out, because standing in my truth, in what I felt in that moment to be true, shook me to my bones. It terrified me because I didn't know what would happen. I didn't know if it would break the relationship if I continued to stand there, or what would happen. If it would break, the ground that my partner was on, if it would trigger him in his own journey, in his own world, so profoundly. And at a moment when I was sharing what I was going through, I remember I was sitting with two friends, and I was explaining what was happening. And I was, venting and just wanted to be held and heard. And one of them said to me, "You're not afraid to be afraid." And I'd never thought about it like that before. That I was afraid, but it was okay. It was okay to be afraid, because that was also part of my truth in the moment. And that it was also scarier for me to step out of my truth, to not be truthful to who I was, because then I wasn't being honest to me or to my partner. And that was scarier. And that was my realization in that time of being. And I remembered a time in my past where speaking my truth had such a traumatic effect on my body. I would go into such profound, like a fear. I would feel an ice core through the center of my body, as if I was filled with an ice cube. And I would start to shake. I would start to shiver, like a full-on trauma response to speaking my truth. And what I mean by speaking my truth was just sharing how I felt about a situation, about my experience of life. Speaking how I felt about it, and not reporting it detached from emotion. And I know a lot of people can relate to this, that you feel somewhere that you're able to share the facts of what's going on, and not actually share your experience of it, how you feel. And I was so disconnected at the time. I didn't really know how I felt about it. Of course, in a very high level, but I didn't allow myself to feel. It was so much. And I felt because I was able to share it like a broadcaster that I was okay. And I found out later I really wasn't okay with it, because it didn't take much to chip away at at that wall there for it to come crumbling down. But that's another story for another time, and one that I've shared recently with the anger video. So that fear that I felt was so profound and icy that if someone wasn't in their full presence with me, and I meant full presence, to receive the words that I was saying, the minute that I felt that they had disconnected in whatever way, shape, or form, and they were unhealthy expectations as well, then, and there were the expectations that I put on myself for others in being present, because I didn't want other people to feel unsafe. And that's the way that I guarded myself. And in reflection, I'd learned how much I had healed in growing my capacity to be able to speak my truth and be scared, but not have that trauma response that I had had before, where I would literally be shaking. And of course, it shook what was going on between me and my partner at the time. And it took time to come to healing on both sides. But the fear that was there and growing the capacity came from really being in my body. And I remember one specific experience where I was sitting, I'd read a book that I share regularly, that was about the journey of love, true love, like love inside of yourself, you being the essence of love. And I can't think of the name of it right now, but I will share it in the comments as soon as I remember it. And I had just finished reading it again after 20 years. And I felt into my body. And I had sat, I think, for at least an hour, just breathing into my body, following the sensations around my body, and experiencing what parts I felt. And when I noticed that I would come into thought or into story, to breathe with that, to be with it, and to also allow it to float through. So what is that sensation? Where does it want to go in my body? What does it want to do? How do you break it down? And if you need more explanation on that, listen to some of my other videos, because I break it down. But the flow of how that moved through me at some point felt like this huge opening through my core body. Huge opening of pure alignment. That's the only word that I can share with you, that I felt so here in myself, and that it was okay, that everything was okay. And I had space and stillness and compassion for myself and all of the hurt that I experience, and the love that I experience, and the overwhelming experience of love, which for me is so huge and so vast that it's hard to imagine that it can pass through this body. And compassion for my partner and his journey, in his healing, in his life. And I could see me, and I could see him, and I could see just life itself in that moment of it's okay. It's just okay. It's all right. It'll be okay because whatever happens is right for this, where I'm at right now, where everyone is at right now. And I felt so present inside of my body. And I share that because I know there are other people who go through similar kind of experiences. And that even though in that moment I felt that, it doesn't mean that that it wiped fear away completely, that it didn't come back. Of course it came back. I'm human. And we're all human. And I put these practices into practice as much as I can to be able to diffuse that excess charge, to take care of my body, to detoxify all of those stress hormones that automatically get activated because they get activated. We all carry trauma somehow inside of ourselves. And I come from two lineages. I'm First Nation Canadian on one side, and I'm Caribbean on the other side. And the mix and the history of both of them, it's like an ancestral download of a huge history of that has all kinds of trauma, but also overcoming. Because the very fact that I'm here is because all of that lineage survived and overcame and passed that life on. And so, growing the space inside of you to be able to be with your experience of fear is something that can be the underlying foundation, part of that underlying foundation of your healing. Because healing is not about erasing. It is about learning how to grow that spaciousness so that when fear comes, and it will come in different ways and shapes and forms, and you'll get wobbly, how do you then breathe with it and embody all that it is in that moment? And that is what inspires me to do what I do, and inspires me to grow my space for aliveness. And I hope it does for you too. I'd love to hear how you experience fear, if you have any questions about fear, and how you create space inside of yourself to be able to be with fear. So it's not like a box where you put fear and you close it and you bury it inside and you operate from the brain only. But how do you embody it so that it moves and transforms? Because I can tell you, that's why I shared that experience. When you sit with yourself in all of the sensations, and you recognize all that your head tries to do to pull you into story and into all the flavors. And if you have a creative brain, then it's as creative working in a positive way for you as in a negative way, as in a way that does not support you. And so you can think of a million different possibilities of where whatever that fear trigger could take you. And so when you recognize what you do, you breathe, you let it be, but also you let it go. You don't allow it to take over or flow down that like rat hole with it. You give it space and you feel where it lives in your body. What is the temperature of that? What are the actual sensations, the contractions, the pressure, the spaciousness, the tingles? What parts of your body do you feel? You follow that. You notice what else arises, what else pulls you. And then you start to learn to observe. And that observation comes with practice until you just feel a different energy that begins to create a different kind of space inside of you. Now, I wonder, you probably have different words of explaining this, and that is beautiful. I'd love to hear that from you. And if you have any questions, you know where to find me. Thank you for listening. I truly appreciate it. And if you happen to be in Amsterdam in the coming month of 2023, in February, which is next month, the coming month, then please join me for a weekend retreat where we flow into emotional release, into sacred grounding, into how to be with all that there is present inside of you, and learn healthy practices on how to release the charge of energies, to express them, to come to clarity and come back to body and ground. And this is going to be womb work and partnered practices. So I'd love for you to be there if you're here. And otherwise, I will see you in this space next time. Big love to you. Reach out if you need anything. Reach out for one-on-one if you also feel that you need a little bit more of a dive into your fears and into an exploration. I have a free self-discovery or free discovery session between the two of us that we could explore what the possibilities are together. Big love.